I'm Kendall, and I'm the communications assistant at the center. So I'm always the one who's hosting these. So if you've been to one before, you probably recognize me. Um, yeah, but I'll just have, so today we're sitting down with Dr. Kate Hathaway, but I'll just have her introduce herself, if that's
Great.
okay.
I am Kate Hathaway. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my role at the center is I'm teaching faculty. So I teach two courses through the center and have been involved with the center since its inception, so quite a number of years in one capacity or another. The two courses I teach are Resilience for Healthcare Professionals, which is a half semester, 7 or 8 week class on how to take care of ourselves and build our resilience in our work as healthcare professionals. And then I think the one we're going to talk most about today is the second course, which is called Ecosystems of Wellbeing at CSPH 3101.
Yeah, that is what we're talking about today. And just before we get like right into that, do you also want to just tell me like, well, I guess you kind of already said it. You're a clinical psychologist, but like, yeah, if you want to talk any more about your background at all before we get into it.
Sure. So my training and education is in clinical psychology, but my focus of interest over the last 30 some years that I've been working in the field is a specialty of psychology called health psychology, which is the interface of um, the mind, body, spirit. So how the physical health of a human being affects their cognitive and emotional health, and then vice versa, because we're all part of the same, it's all part of the same system. So I worked for a little over 30 years in an interdisciplinary clinic at the University of Minnesota Academic Health Center with individuals who had chronic and acute pain and chronic health conditions. So that kind of fed my interest and expertise.
Cool, awesome. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of start to talk a little bit about 3101 ecosystems of well-being. So do you want to just before we like dive right into it, do you want to just tell me a little more like surface level about that course?
Sure. The course actually was co-designed by me and another individual who's no longer here. He moved to California and is doing more applied systems work. But Dylan is a systems expert and taught me a great deal about systems theory and ecosystems. The term ecosystems actually, I think originally was, I don't know, talked about in the field of environmental science. That is how soil health interacts with water quality, interacts with air quality to produce growth. And it's now been applied to many different areas. But the ecosystems course is a combination then of two things. It combines some of the systems theory, like how do systems work and what predicts a sustainable system, like how does the system last over time, or why would a system fall apart, and personal well-being. So it combines those two things because the health or well-being of a system, needless to say, impacts the health and well-being of anybody who's interacting in and with that system, and vice versa. Your choices, your personal health will impact the health of the system.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And again, I don't think I said this at the beginning, but if anyone in the audience has questions, feel free to ask those. Or if you're watching this later, once it's posted, you can always feel free to comment or reach out if you have any questions, and we can try to get. So yeah, I guess so you're talking about like ecosystems of well-being and like what do you have like an example of what an ecosystem of well-being would be to kind of conceptualize it better?
That's a really good question, but it's kind of interesting in thinking about that because you suggested that I think about that before the chat. Um, I think probably I don't think of anything that's not an ecosystem, right? Like how you decorate your house impacts how you feel, right? And how you feel affects how you decorate your house.
Mm-hmm.
The weather is a system that we know impacts us. The current pandemic and the systems that are changing around that and what it has demanded of us obviously affects our well-being. So there's very little that really is not part of an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so when I was thinking about that question, I thought, I don't know that I would say anything is not part of an ecosystem,
Yeah.
because everything is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that like kind of the well-being of others and like the people around us is affecting like our own personal well-being?
Super question. So again, in the current circumstance, you probably have a better sense of this even than you did before, right? So
Yeah.
if somebody you live with or interact with on a regular basis is crabby or down, depressed, or using substances, it is clearly going to have an impact on you. So how they live, the choices they make, their moods will have an impact on you. I often talk about in my field when I'm doing psychotherapy or when I worked in inpatient psychiatric health. If someone enters a unit or enters a hospital and is highly anxious or is actively psychotic, it has a distinct impact on how everybody else in the unit reacts. So not just the person and the staff, but also all the other patients. So, we all know that like anxiety feels catchy, right? Mm-hmm. I feel anxious and the people around me start to feel anxious because our bodies know and our minds and spirits know that if I, Kate, am worried, maybe there's something to be worried about. And so then you, Kendall, should be worried too. And so you start to put your antenna up a little bit also.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's all the other research that is, for me, fascinating. We used to think that personal health was about what I ate and how I exercised. But what we also know is that there are many social determinants of health. I had a colleague once who said, your health and well-being is about how many McDonald's hamburgers you ate this week, and how many minutes of exercise you got. But the truth is there are lots of other things. People who live in poverty-stricken areas, who can't access good food, who fear for their safety, those are social determinants that will significantly impact their well-being.
Yeah. And I guess like you talked about these things kind of in more like in negative ways, like negative emotions, but can it work in like positive ways too?
Bingo, great question. Yeah. Right. So if you happen to be living with somebody who sings their way through the day, that's a great thing. Or if you put on uplifting music as compared to down trending music, right? You have a different feeling. If it's sunny, if you're interacting with someone who has sunny disposition, it has an impact on you also. If you're working with or interacting with someone who is peaceful, if the TV isn't blaring negative news all the time, it does matter. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I figured that was the answer.
Yeah.
So I guess like we're kind of talking about it already with the pandemic, but like specifically maybe even on like a broader level than just who you're living with, but like how can this be applied like now with COVID and stuff?
Well, I think part of what I am observing is happening both from my clinical practice and from other people is we're kind of going through a pattern in terms of our reaction to what's going on. So the first week or so that we were sheltering at home, we were confused and overwhelmed by all the changes that this required of us. And I think there was a lot of anxiety. So a lot of that was catchy also. And I think in this last week, what I'm observing is more people, and you can ask yourself, or the listeners can ask themselves, what are you experiencing now compared to what you were experiencing in that first week? But I'm guessing you're feeling kind of bleh. So not necessarily depressed in the clinical sense, but it's kind of a depressing situation. You can't be with your people. You can't go out and have a meal and feel safe walking around. So In the current situation, it is making that kind of negative impact. But we can change that. We can turn off the TV, even though we're required to do a lot of digital work. That's not, our brains are really not liking that so much. They don't like to look at a two-dimensional image of something that they're used to seeing in 3 dimensions, that they can touch and see a whole body in a whole space, right? So they're working harder. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah. No, I think that answered the question. And I think going to, like, you started to go in this direction, like how can we, like, improve the quality of our lives, like, inside, just from inside our homes, or like our ecosystems that we're living in? Like, what can we do?
Okay, one is less digital time.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to do it, but we have a tendency to, okay, I finished with the Instagram Live, or I finished with my course or whatever it is, and now I'll just scroll down the internet, or, go on Facebook or whatever it might be. That's the time to turn it off and go outside. I'm a firm believer in how the natural world heals us and supports our well-being. But if you can't go outside, even go to a window and look at big spaces, because you're used to now looking at small spaces on a computer, and the eye will relax when you see big open spaces. Or bike, if you can, to sit by a lake and just watch the water move, or sit by the river. And if you have to drive, sit in your car. But big open spaces will help you heal. Music helps. Dance helps. Movement of all kind helps. Physical activity is critical. You gotta have that physical activity, because most of us are sedentary anyway in much of our lives. It's interesting to me that I read that people are eating more nutritionally because they're cooking at home. That's awesome. It's really cool. So thinking about ways you can feed your body. You might be sleeping more than you did before, or having a better quality sleep. So those are the physical health things that we can focus on. We can also think about our cognitive health. So sometimes we lapse into, like, negative thinking. This is hopeless. It's all gonna end in a disaster. That's not helpful to our current well-being, right? Because in the current moment, we need to remind ourselves that we're safe, and it's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay. We're safe. And to keep coming back to that mantra is really helpful. That's the work of, mindfulness, meditation kinds of exercise. In this moment, I'm good. I'm safe. And in the next moment, I'm not helpless. I can do something. I can exercise. I can turn on different music. I can turn off the reports about how quickly the pandemic is spreading, right? There's an exercise that a researcher talked about once, called giving a prize. So I love this exercise. Do you want me to keep talking, Kendall? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I was just looking at my questions on
So the give a prize was really an interesting thing. And so I often recommend it to clients and students. It's if you wake up every day and program your brain to look for one thing, just one thing, all day long, that you're going to give a metaphorical prize to. So it could be, this is the most beautiful blue, right? And this gets the prize today. Or the smell that I sense from the oven, from baking bread or whatever it is, that gets my prize today. Or a sound, or anything, right? So you start programming your brain to look for something that's so beautiful that it deserves the prize. Well, what do you think that does to your brain?
Makes it happier.
It starts looking for all the good things.
Yeah.
Instead of, because our brains are wired to protect ourselves, and so they're going to, like, be ready to focus on the negative. But if you start programming your brain to look at the positive, so not only is it going to, like, focus and you're going to feel better, but you're going to recognize that you have so many things that you didn't earn, that are beautiful, that you're not entitled to, right? that are just there, that are just gifts, right? That's a really valuable experience. There's a photographer by the name of Jim Brandenburg who did that with photography. He allowed himself one shot a day throughout 365 days of the year. It's a beautiful book of photography, but can you imagine
Yeah.
what he must have
That sounds really
experienced?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. I like thinking I could like, that's something you could like write in your journal or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's another one, gratitude journals. I have a
Yeah.
sister that journals daily, every day before she gets up out of bed. She gets her coffee, she goes back to bed, she journals things that she's grateful for.
Yeah.
Another thing that I often practice for myself is think about things that bring me joy. Like make a list of 10 things that are really joyful. So it might be, a warm cup of tea, or it might be petting your four-legged friend, or digging in the garden. So make a list of them and then do at least one a day.
Yeah.
Just one thing intentionally that brings you joy.
Yeah. That's cool. That's very helpful. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't really have a lot more questions, so I don't know if you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up. But this has been basically, yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess the only thing I'll add is I'm currently in the process of reading final papers for the students in the class. And it's fascinating what really interesting and important ideas people come up with for how to support the well-being of everybody in a community, because every choice we make every day impacts not only our personal health, but the health of the systems that we live in and interact with. So yeah, things like how you design a building to be a healthy building and a building that makes people feel good to be in, right? Or how you think about access to healthcare for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Or how you think about how your decisions to wear a mask or not wear a mask or socially distance not only impacts you, but impacts everybody with whom you interact. So it's really, I love getting to this point in the class where I get to read how people are putting those ideas together. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. It sounds like a really interesting class.
I love it. I love teaching it. So I
Yeah.
hope students love taking it as much as I love teaching it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if that class sounds interesting to you, you can find it on our website and on One Stop, and register for it. How many credits did you say it is?
It's
Okay.
yeah, I think it's 2.
It should say on our website. I can
Yeah.
it when I post this video. Yeah, I'll link the
Yeah.
course. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hathaway, for joining us today. And before we go, I just wanted to let everyone watching now or later know that we have extended our health coaching application deadline for our programs. So the deadline is now July 15th, and that's for the fall 2020 health coaching program start. Wow. And so if you are interested in that at all, or if you're just graduating and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, like maybe look into that. Yeah, because it's a really cool thing, and we extend the deadline, like especially for a lot of reasons, but in part because there might be a lot of people who didn't think about it before. So, whoa, I don't know what just happened there, but
Me neither.
don't worry about it. We're about to, oh, there it goes. But
I'm back.
yeah. And if you are looking for any more tips about well-being, your own health and well-being, or about specifically the health of how your environments can affect your own health, we have a ton of that on our Taking Charge website, which is takingcharge.csh.umn.edu. So check that out as well. Yeah, but I think that's about everything. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kendall. Bye.
Bye.